Joel Embiid has now officially returned to the floor for the Philadelphia 76ers, and it feels as if the season has been resurrected. Now, in typical Sixers fashion, it was not this clear-cut path to get back to the floor, nor did we officially know that Joel Embiid was going to be suiting up until shortly before the process. Now, I dropped a video yesterday talking a little bit about Embiid's specific outlook and the Sixers playoff seeding kind of outlook from here, and it looked up until shortly before the game that Joel Embiid would not be participating. I mentioned the 5 o'clock deadline for the injury report that needed to be updated, which was my understanding of the situation, and frankly, I still believe is the case. But at that point, Joel Embiid still listed as out until we got this update from Woj here saying that, well, first from Tim Bontemp saying that Joel Embiid has been upgraded to questionable, and then Adrian Wojnarowski saying that Sixers star Joel Embiid is indeed expected to make his return versus Oklahoma City tonight. Now, as I mentioned, I do think that they were a little late to the punch there, and that does seem to be the case, as we got on the TNT broadcast from Jared Greenberg saying, quote, "I've spoken to multiple people inside the NBA league office, and we should expect some sort of investigation into how the Sixers handled the injury report, with Joel Embiid going from out to questionable to playing in this short span of time. The league office will certainly take note of that." Now, I'll also note here that the Sixers have already been fined this season due to the late scratch against the Denver Nuggets, that coming due to a similar or related knee injury at the minimum back during that, where Embiid was listed as completely active until right before game time, right before starting lineups were announced, and then him whipped out of that game. The Sixers did receive a fine for that. Now, in a perfect world, I don't understand why these Sixers can't just treat this like any other normal organization, where you're either, if you think there's a chance that he's either playing or not playing, what's wrong with throwing a questionable tag up there? I think a lot of lives would be made easier if that was the case. But the most important thing for this Sixers team is that Joel Embiid did return to the floor. Now, I know the Thunder were without Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, were without Jalen Williams, that they were shorthanded, but this was still a massive win for the Sixers against one of the top teams in the Western Conference. Now, ultimately, the Sixers did secure the 109-105 victory there. Embiid in his return playing 29 minutes, adding 24 points, 7 assists, 6 rebounds, 3 steals. He did have 6 turnovers and shot just 6 of 14 from the field. But overall, I was really impressed with the level that he looked at. I thought he was moving well. He looked spry. He looked thin. He did not look like he was out of shape, although you could clearly see him being gassed. It did not look like he put on weight in the situation. That it does feel like Embiid was making a conscious effort to stay in shape, to be at his best form when he returned to the floor. And while he will still have to kick off the rust, because there were absolutely moments of that, you still saw the impact that he made on this team, that he is the central driving force for the entire Sixers organization, and all these players around him make significantly more sense with him on the floor as well. So I was really impressed with the level that he played at. And Nick Nurse also gave him some credit for kind of the work that he has put in, staying in shape, making sure that he is in the best case scenario. So I did want to pull up this post-game quote here, that Nurse saying that Embiid has lost weight and worked really hard to get back for this team. Says he would normally say a player needs a couple weeks to get his conditioning back, but if all goes right for Embiid, he wouldn't be surprised if he's ready to roll in another game or two. That fitness level is going to be the biggest question, and that is the biggest concern. There were moments down the stretch where Embiid was completely gassed, hand on his knee, bending over at the free throw line, looking like he was really going through it. And that's why it's important for him to kick off the rust and play through it right now, that he has to play himself into shape. And in Embiid's defense here, this is not something that you can call him out as lazy on. That this is a guy who's naturally 7 feet tall, 280 pounds, and he's had to stay off his leg for the past couple weeks, the 2 months since he's had surgery. And also, while you can jump on the exercise bike as much as you want or try the zero gravity treadmill, there's no way to replicate the true feelings of actually playing live ball basketball, especially at the NBA level. And that's what Embiid was feeling last night, that it was him getting back into that shape, getting back into that form. And for the most part, I still thought he did really solid. That ultimately making the game-winning play for the Sixers team, where Josh Giddey attempted to take him off the dribble. Embiid picked his pocket, went down the other end, and found himself at the free throw line for that point in time. That is the value that Joel Embiid holds. That even as he was on pace to lead the NBA in scoring for the 3rd consecutive season, I think you can make a real argument that defensively he's even more impactful to the Sixers team. The way that they rotated defensively, the way that he was able to protect the paint, be that stabilizing force, that anchor for that defense, it was quite clear last night. And as far as what else he brings to this team, there is a leadership aspect that Joel Embiid, I think, has embraced this season in a way that he hasn't in years past. And I did want to pull up this quote from Kyle Neubeck here, or this portion of his article that he wrote for PHLY Sports, which I thought showed this a great deal. So to read this off here, Kyle writes, "Half an hour after his return performance against the Thunder, Joel Embiid proved his importance to the Sixer with greater ease than he had on the court. Seated at his locker, a few stalls down from Buddy Hield, Embiid was already in assessment mode. Embiid was unhappy. He told Hield that the veteran sharpshooter had passed up shot opportunities that the big man believed were there for him to take. It may be the most consistent message he has provided to his running mates, ranging from non-shooters to snipers like Hield, and while Hield offered his perspective, the two ultimately came to an understanding. If the pressure is going to come to the big man, the other four guys on the floor know that they have to be ready to fire at all times. 2 months removed from his last appearance for the team, Embiid could once again share the perspective of someone in the trenches with his guys. And after 2 months spent figuring out a way to win and compete without him, Sixers players were candid about the adjustment of absorbing Embiid back in the lineup. Quote, "I think we all played a little timid," Kyle Lowry told PHLY on Tuesday, "to make sure he got going, which is okay. We'll figure out ways to play and how to play through him again." So a lot of good stuff in this breakdown, and I will echo Kyle's sentiment here that this has constantly been the biggest message that Joel Embiid has shared, that the players around him need to shoot, that's how you punish teams, that when teams are going to be sending doubles and triples at Joel Embiid, which was the case last night with the Thunder, even with it being Joel Embiid's first game back, you have to have ways to counter that and punish that. And that is the entire driving reason why Buddy Hield was traded for at the deadline. We did see one of the two-man action with Buddy Hield that led to a mid-range jumper. The thing about Buddy that's been frustrating to me specifically is for a guy that is one of the greatest shooters statistically of all time and a guy that just is one of the best shooters in the league currently and will go down in history because of that, he's really timid with letting it fly. That this isn't this long range, ready to throw up a million shot attempts per game. He's very calculated in the attempts that he does take. It reminds me a little bit of Seth Curry with this Sixers team. That was my frustration with Seth. Seth, who is the all-time leading scorer by percentage from beyond the three-point line in a Sixers uniform, he was a guy that wasn't willing to really take contested looks. The Sixers need that out of Buddy Hield, and he can have far more open looks. That they're going to be far more open than was the case without Joel, but he still has to make an effort. And to point to what Buddy did last night, played 21 minutes, had just 7 points, 2 rebounds, 2 steals, just 2 3-point attempts, 2 for 6 from the field and 1 for 2 from beyond the arc. You have to get more than that. That Buddy Hield should, on an every game basis, be attempting at least 5 3-pointers per game. The Sixers need the offense to function. That is why he's on the floor, and he needs to deliver because of that. So they cannot afford for him to be timid, and I like that Joel's being direct with that right from the start. But I did want to highlight one other guy in the box score, and that's Kelly Oubre. Kelly Oubre last night, leading the team in scoring with 25 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, had a block, shot 4 of 7 from 3 and 8 of 16 from the field. The Sixers do not win last night's game without Kelly Oubre. The three-pointers that he hit were huge. He had a couple moments driving to the basket. There was a late game after timeout from a play under the basket, which he finished with a dunk and one, which was crucial to the victory. The spark and the effort that he plays with is infectious. And Kelly had a cool quote after the game, basically saying how it feels like we're back from spring break and that the cool kid in class is back in with Joel. So there's going to be some growing pains with everybody figuring out to play. But I do think Kelly has continued this progression where he cemented his importance to this team during Embiid's absence, and he's ready to kind of fall back into his correct role of being a very vital piece of the Sixers team alongside Joel Embiid. That his ability to cut baseline, his athleticism, him being a lob threat, these are all weapons that are effective around Joel Embiid. So it was nice to see that translate right away, and I do think the other guys will catch on. Another noteworthy point I thought from last night's game was that Kyle Lowry's minutes were directly mirrored with Joel Embiid, meaning that every time Joel was on the floor, Kyle Lowry was as well. Now, I will note that there was no Tyrese Maxey last night, so that may be a driving reason that won't always be the case. I'm quite comfortable watching a Maxey and Joel two-man game, and we've seen the effectiveness already of that. So I think that might have been just a last night thing, but I still think that is something to note, that how much Nick Nurse trusts Kyle Lowry, and Kyle Lowry being like the true point guard that this team needs at time. I do trust his calming presence. Took a really crucial charge last night, up to 9 charges taken in just 19 games in a Sixers uniform. He's a winning player, and that's going to continue. But the bottom line is that the optimism for this Sixers team should resume, that this could be a scary team. And I know I talked about the potential outlook for the playoffs in yesterday's video, at that point being a 5% chance of the Sixers getting out of the play-in tournament and securing a top 6 seed. According to Basketball Reference, that number has now increased to 8.5%, and I will note that tomorrow night's matchup against the Miami Heat will change that pretty significantly one way or another. That is going to be a crucial game from a standings perspective. The Heat currently a game and a half above the Sixers for that 7th seed, so make sure that you're locked in for your TV and ready for that one, because that's going to have a great deal to do too with the standings of the Sixers and the Eastern Conference as a whole. but you do see the bones, you see the pieces, and it all makes sense around Joel Embiid. That when you have this Thanksgiving Day meal, that you need the turkey front and center, and that being Joel Embiid. That you can have whatever mashed potatoes, whatever mac and cheese that you want. If you don't have the main course in Joel Embiid, none of it makes sense. And that's what we finally saw on full display with the pieces that have been added. So not a lot of time left in the season, 6 games remaining for the Sixers, but it is fair to be optimistic that you can squint and see why this team can be a true contender with the top dogs of the East. We're watching teams like the Milwaukee Bucks absolutely fall apart, losing to the Wizards last night in a game that was just an absolute collapse as Doc Rivers throws literally the travel staff under the bus after the game for not being professional enough, and that translating to them not being focused on the road. That is what's going on out there in Milwaukee. Now in Philadelphia, we're seeing Joel Embiid gradually return to form, him being able to kick off the cobwebs and be ready for the first healthy playoff run of his career. I'm ready to buy back in, and I think you should be too. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Are you as back in as I am about this new Joel Embiid-led Sixers team? Make sure you're hitting that subscribe button to keep the family growing right here at Sixers Digest. Dropping a like on this video, and I'll be talking with you next time. Peace.